Hey everyone, it's Angie Miller with AFAA. I am an AFAA mentor and an NASM master instructor, and I am so glad you joined us here for our Friday AFAA Live. I'm super excited about today because I absolutely love and admire our guest. So our topic today is how to take your brand to the big stage and be a leader in the fitness space. This is especially powerful for those of you, this global group fitness community who would love to get out there and present and educate and share what you do on a bigger stage. So we have the perfect person to speak to that. My guest is Amy Thompson, and she is a vice president for fitness group for Active Interest Media. She is also a general manager of Idea Health and Fitness. So Amy is a powerful female leader in the fitness space, which I absolutely love. And I can't wait to share some of her insights and personal stories. And then if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to weigh in. You can text us or you can Facebook Live us some questions, and I'll throw them out there to Amy as we go along. So Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you in case I missed anything about your introduction that you want to share.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to say I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. And I too have admired your work for the time that I've seen you emerging in the industry. So thank you for having me as a guest. The only other thing I would mention as when I'm the Vice President for Active Interest Media. So I have now the privilege of overseeing Oxygen Magazine. And so as I share some of the learnings today, it's interesting because I have the perspective both now of growing up in the industry and seeing what's happening in the media world. And so I think those tips are really relevant to our conversation today.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. That's a much more global perspective. And so I love that. So Amy, let's talk about some tips on how we can build a brand and rise above the competition, because we know that there are a sea of group fitness instructors out there, but how do we rise above the competition out there? Do you have any kind of tips or advice for all of those watching today?
Yeah. Well, first, I will offer that I know this is probably what most mentors would tell you, but really learning about everything that's out there and taking the time to find your essence. And what I mean by essence is what is the format, or what is the class, or what is the area of fitness that really, really excites you, where it's tapping on your passion, and it really lights you up and energizes you. And the reason that's important is as you go down this path of refining your message and sharing it out to other instructors or to getting a stage in front of consumers, really that essence will keep coming through because it's what you hold dear. It's what's closest to your soul. So if you are drawn to the mind-body genre and that is your essence, that's your jam, then really that should be the area that you want to excel and grow in, rather than maybe forcing yourself into a power or strength kind of genre. So that's first, is take the time to learn about everything that's out there and find the thing that lights you up, that just fires your soul and makes you so happy to share that message.
Yeah, I love that.
Go ahead.
I absolutely love that. I was thinking that book by Simon Sinek, the one about leadership and what's your why. And so when you said what's your essence or what's your jam, it's what's your why. Why are you here, and what are you really hoping to do with this space and this time in this place? Because fitness is full of all kinds of expertise, but what makes you want to put your feet on the floor in the morning, and what makes your heart sing? So you also mentioned, in line of refining your message, I think that you mentioned a powerful word there, and that's the word mentor, because sometimes we are so passionate. We want to do everything. I'm super guilty of that, right? So that's why I speak about boundaries and stress, because, I'm a work in progress. And so a mentor can really kind of help us sit down and refine what is your why, and what do you hope to accomplish? So maybe you could speak to that.
Yes, my first mentor is the person who kind of helped me raise my hand for my first presenting opportunity and just gave me the courage and encouragement to say, you're ready. You really have something to share with other fitness professionals. So, but another thing a mentor can offer is they really can help you to refine the message. This person should be someone that you trust implicitly, so you can be vulnerable with them to take really critical feedback about your presentation skills, the way you're projecting, the message that you're sharing. But it doesn't have to be someone in the fitness industry. It's helpful to have a combination of mentors, people that know our industry and people that may be in media or that may be in business or that can offer you a new perspective. So I've had lots of mentors during my career. The first, as I said, was a fitness and business mentor, but I also had an executive from a TV channel who was a female executive who I admired, and she helped me really understand business and communication and how to show up in executive positions. So for the purpose of finding your brand, this mentor will help you to refine you and help you to find your superpower, which is my next point. For me, a superpower it's the thing that sets you apart. It's the thing that is unique about you. And your class participants would probably be the ones to tell you what that superpower is. I did a lot of work on myself to try to identify what's my superpower in leadership, what's my superpower in teaching. And for me, I'm a connector. I thrive in connecting. It comes very naturally to me. So the way that played out as an instructor was I was able to connect others in the class. It was never about me on stage. It was always about Sally meeting Susie and meeting June. So they had someone else to show up to class for, not just me. So that was my superpower. But I would encourage you to find your superpower because it's the reason you're successful in your current role, and it's what's going to propel you as you take that next big step in your career.
Well, I love that. I actually did an Angie's Tips AFAA video on Find Your Superpower recently because it's funny that we didn't talk about that and we ended up on the same page. So finding your superpower is so important, and you're right. I too am a connector, and a lot of group fitness people are connectors in general, but I think that what I hear you say is when you connect people with one another, people also can connect you with one another, and we can learn from one another, learn from their stories and all those ways but I love hearing that. So yeah. Your superpower is connection. Yeah. And I see that. I noticed that even when I first met you. So one thing that you talked about too in mentorship is vulnerability. And I think that's huge because I think you're right. I think when you find a mentor, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. And you also mentioned finding mentors in other spaces. And I think that's huge because I have a lot of friends who are not at all affiliated with the fitness space. And often I'm calling them because they're great at marketing or they're great at business. And I'm running stuff by them and they really don't have a feel for where I walk. They don't necessarily know my journey, but they have so much expertise outside of it that they can kind of help me see my world differently. And it gives me great insight.
Yeah. Great. I love that. And yeah, again, mentorship will be really important in your journey, no matter where you are in your career or whether you ever present or not, find a mentor. There's a lot of, especially in fitness, there are now lots of options whereby you could get female mentorship in fitness business. So I just want to offer that I'm a member of a couple of different groups where there's actually a nonprofit called WIFA, WIFA, and it is an organization where female fitness executives and suppliers and instructors are mentoring each other and giving a woman a microphone and helping a woman to take her brand to the community and the masses and to replicate and license. So there's just a lot of things happening in that space where we're helping one another.
Oh, I love that. I wrote that down myself, so that's great to hear. It's good to hear about those types of networking communities, especially nonprofit communities. And there's also speaking communities, right? What is the big kind of global speaking platform that you can join? Why I'm not able to think of the name?
Is it Toastmasters?
Yes. Exactly. So you can test your skills, test your presentation skills, your speaking skills. You can join your local area Toastmasters group. So that's excellent. So let's talk about, taking that, you get your mentor, you hone in, you talk about what's your jam, that's my favorite one, and you talk about where you really want to go with this and what makes you shine on stage and what you have that you can share with people. But now let's talk about what are some advice, or what is some advice that you would give to group fitness instructors who want to start their journey in presenting and educating? I know how I started my journey, and I'd be curious to see, what tips you have.
Yeah. Well, the first question I would ask you is, why do you want to present, and who do you want to present to? Because in our industry, and really in a lot of industries, there's kind of two distinct paths you could take. In the Oxygen, my brand, we're meeting the consumer in their living room and through media. So that's a very, very different path. It's an extension of what you're doing in your clubs each day. So you're showing up to take participants through a workout and lead a workout. The presenting at conventions, you could be teaching other instructors. So a lot of our conventions you are taking your message and you're helping to upskill, to coach, and to develop other instructors. So for me, that was really empowering, because I learned early in my career that I could have a lot greater impact by working with one personal trainer or one Group X instructor who could then support and help hundreds of participants. And so I would ask you why. I'm going to get back to the why you want to present and who you want to present to, because while you should always have your foot on a stage and teaching the consumer, leading instructors is a different path, and it takes you to really developing and grooming other coaches. So find the why behind that, and make sure you're really clear with yourself about what it is you have to share, and why you want to bring this message to other instructors and coaches, because that will lead the content whereby you want to present on stage.
I love that. And that's actually, I started presenting for AFAA. That's what I started doing. I started leading workshops for AFAA. And then that led into, I started presenting for NASM. I started presenting at fitness conventions. And I agree, my why has always been education based. So I want to take my message of community and sharing my passion, but I love the education platform. I love being able to teach things like a certification workshop, so that I can then keep paying it forward, so that then I turn out 20 more group fitness instructors and they can go their direction. So, but you also said something huge, which is, it's not just about your why. It is your why, but who is your why toward? Is it the consumer, or is it the fitness audience? Because years ago, I started producing fitness videos. That was my consumer brand, but that can also be to a fitness audience. But then again, I shifted over to, pretty much purely education. And so that's a great point. Are you trying to reach the consumer, or are you trying to reach fit pros?
Yeah, and early in my career, I was struggling between the two, because again, I still liked being the practitioner and the instructor and being on stage. And I always, like I said, it's important to keep doing that, so you're in tune with what it takes to be a great instructor. But when we get to a little more about my career, there were a few sticking points where I was so far in the middle that no one really knew what I did, and it hurt my brand. It hurt my visibility, because I was just in the middle, and it wasn't clear who I was trying to reach. So, but I want to get back into how to get into these types of conventions and presentations. So the other thing I would offer is that a lot of these conventions offer continuing education credits, and there is a set protocol or qualification list that we look to with the instructors that we're selecting. So I would encourage you to look to the certifying agency, look to AFAA's guidelines that they have for instructors' qualifications, and see where you may be lacking in some of those skills and qualities or experiences you may be able to pick up, so that you meet all the check boxes on paper in order to be eligible.
I love that. It's like I always say that about any job that you're going to pursue. Look up what the job description says, and then start from there. It's almost like taking a test. I used to teach my students, read the questions before you read the essay, so that you know what you're looking for. So you're right. It's about kind of doing your research and knowing what each of those platforms is expecting, so that if that's a platform that speaks to you, you can build your skills accordingly. I love that.
Yep. And then next, so you're going to discover what it is you want to share at this convention. So let's just say that you have a concept or a class that you want to take to a convention because you're interested in sharing that with other instructors and perhaps replicating that class. So the next thing that you'll want to do is make sure that you are, I always tell aspiring instructors to practice this in your club, practice this class or concept in your community, and practice this class or concept anywhere that you can, family, friends. So you really are honing in on your presentation skills and making sure that the message is resonating with the audience and working on yourself as a presenter. The other thing that will happen while you're practicing and teaching this concept is that you can get video footage, because now in such a competitive space to get speaking opportunities, when you apply, you're going to be asked to submit some video if you've never presented with that organization before, because they want to see your stage presence. And so by practicing, it's going to help you to work on your skills and your projection and your eye contact and the way you move your body on stage. And then all of that, eventually you will film to submit with your application.
I love that. And it comes down to the fact that when you're a presenter, you are educating, right? You're educating, but you also need leadership skills, you need motivation skills, you need presentation skills, you need to be a good speaker, you need to have charisma on stage. There's so many different components, and that's why the mentorship, the Toastmasters, practicing on video, practicing with your family and friends over and over and over again is huge. It's really about just doing a lot of homework, a lot of work behind the scenes to prepare yourself. It's a lot of grind, right?
Yep.
It's a lot of grind. It doesn't come easy. It takes a lot of time and a lot of tenacity.
It is. And even when you do get a speaking opportunity, there's no guarantee that you'll get selected for future years or for that subsequent conference. So, I've been a presenter for 20 plus years, but there's been years when I was not invited, plenty of years when I was not invited back to speak. And a lot of times now that I'm kind of on the inside of planning conventions, I know that there's so much that goes into the selection process, and they're looking for what is going to resonate with our audience in our current landscape. What got good ratings last year? What kinds of topics would be really helping the industry to grow? So we as convention providers, we want to make sure that we're pushing the industry and growing the industry, and that we're bringing in relevant subject matter, but we're pushing the envelope to bring in new and exciting topics, classes, concepts. So all of these considerations go together, and you may not get selected for any number of reasons, not because you're not a good presenter, but because your content may not have been relevant to that year's program.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think that sometimes in the fitness space, we get very, very passionate, and rejection never feels good. It feels like rejection. But really, sometimes when we look back at those times when we were rejected, or we weren't accepted for a job, or we weren't accepted to present, those have been some of the greatest learning opportunities for me. Those have really built on my tenacity, my determination, and my growth potential. So I think, and plus I think that rejection isn't necessarily rejection. What it is, it's just that whoever is on the selection committee, like you said, it could have to do with the times, right? It could also just have to do with they're not seeing you through the lens that somebody else will see you through. And thank goodness that door closed, because another one will open, and whatever that entity is or that person is, they're going to see you through the lens that you want to be seen through.
That's right. That's right. That's very powerful. I'll share a quick personal story here. It has to do with presenting, but 9 separate times I had applied for the award category that I was recently accepted as the Fitness Leader of the Year, but I applied for that award 9 different times. And I share that story just to remind us that, that made me stronger. It made me want it more. It showed me how I needed to improve myself as a leader, as an instructor. I felt that, what I would do is I'd go back to the application each year and say, well, where am I weak? where would I need to grow? And how can I become a better all-around leader, instructor? And then submit again and see if I won. So don't give up. If you're not selected initially, or if you were selected and then not selected, please keep reinventing yourself and finding what's relevant to the industry. Do your homework about what's already been done, what's out there, what's next. More importantly, what's next. And bring that subject matter, bring that outline, and bring that session to your application next year.
I love that. And I love that you shared your vulnerability, that you, that you went through the experience that all of us have been through, that you reapplied, and that you took that as an opportunity to grow and get stronger and get better. I absolutely love that. And I think that type of vulnerability and sharing that type of vulnerability is what connects us to other people and what makes other people kind of want to join our tribe and say, hey, I trust you because you can share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that doesn't make you feel like less than.
Yeah. And I think the last advice or suggestion I could share is, there's been so many fitness professionals that I've groomed or worked with in the different club chains that I've worked with in my career who, I was trying to give them the nudge, but oftentimes they wouldn't take the leap to actually apply because they would get so caught up in their head about what can I teach? What can I offer? What's unique about me? So then we'd back up and go back to step 1, which is really defining your niche, your essence. What's your message? Is this really what you want to do first? And then helping them along the way. But most people get stuck in that piece of why me? And the fear sets in, and their negative Nelly, or whoever you call your inner critic, steps in and says, you can't do this, you're not good enough, why you? And I would just encourage you to push past that fear and keep putting one foot in front of the other. Submit the application because you won't know until you try, and you'll learn from the experience, and you will be stronger and more confident the next time you apply for a convention to speak. So please keep moving forward and don't let your inner critic tell you you can't do it.
Oh, definitely. I think our inner critic is far more powerful than any rejection, right? Our own, when we stand on that mountain of fear, that's what holds us back from wanting to put ourselves out there for opportunities. But again, those have been some of my greatest growth experiences. So, but I also like what you said about kind of reinventing yourself, because I know that for me personally, it has been a process of reinvention. And for me, my journey, some of that came from my motivation, so to speak, was that we moved around the country a lot. And so as kind of a trailing spouse, but wanting to keep my career flourishing, the good news was fitness always went with me, that I needed to keep that academic part. And then I went back into mental health because I decided that for me, I think that what the industry needs is a person who's connected mentally and physically. I think what the industry needs is somebody to build a bridge and connect the two communities. And so that was sort of my last reinvention that I have been massaging for years and years and years, which is bringing fitness to mental health and bringing mental health to fitness and connecting the two communities. And so I have found that that's been a wonderful thing for me because it's not necessarily a reinvention. All those things go together, but it contributes to my overall goal, which is to reach people.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think, well, just on the topic of mental health and behavior change, based on the experience we've all been through in the last couple of months, what I would want to share with everyone listening is that your job's never been more important for mental health. And you don't need to be a specialist and have a degree to help the folks in your class. You just need to recognize the signs and be able to refer when needed. But your communities, your family, they're going to need you more than ever as a positive force to move their bodies and to engage as a community again through movement. But most importantly, we're going to have a lot of mental health issues that we have to work through. And we as fitness professionals, we get the distinct and unique privilege of meeting people in a vulnerable space, in an energetic space, and in a space where people let you into their lives. And so it's also a powerful obligation that we have. When you see something, you have to say something, and you've got to help people in a respectful way and have a team of people that you can refer to. So I love that you talked about mental health, and it's needed more now than ever, I think.
It really is. And I think what you said is perfect. You don't have to be a professional to be somebody who can just listen, authentically listen, offer 2 ears, offer a hug, offer a smile. Because even when I'm in the fitness space, I cannot bring in the prescriptive part of me, right? I'm not a mental health practitioner when I'm teaching fitness classes, but that never takes away my ability to authentically listen and hear someone's journey. And then, like you said, to be able to actually refer them out when needed. But I think that mental health is more important than ever in our fitness space, and whether that comes from a coaching perspective or someone like me, a clinical perspective. But I think that we are bridging the communities more than ever. And COVID has taught us all that the absolute importance of understanding that emotional wellness and physical wellness are so closely connected.
I couldn't agree more. I had been a certified personal trainer and group X instructor through lots of different organizations, but I took the leap and I studied and learned more about how to be a holistic health coach and how to work on behavior change. And it was an important part of my career because as I matured as an individual and I saw more and more clients that I worked with and taught, I knew it was something I needed to add to my repertoire to understand, to meet people where they're at, and to be able to offer tools and resources for folks, beyond just movement. So
I love that. I love that you did that. I did not know that about you. See, you're just a constant fascination. So, there's something that I want to talk about, and that is advice that we have, or, kind of our own journey, mistakes that we've made, situations that we've run into that have kind of gotten us to where we are. And you shared one about the rejection. And so what are some lessons that you've learned? And maybe share a little bit about your journey. I shared a little bit about mine. I started out making group fitness, started presenting for AFAA, started presenting at conventions, moved back into mental health. That's kind of me in a nutshell, but yours is fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. So I like to say I've held every job in the industry, and some of them more than once. So I started really as I was a college athlete. So I started as an assistant strength and conditioning coach and personal trainer while I was going to massage therapy school. So I don't keep my massage credential active, but I was a practicing massage therapist, a sports massage therapist specifically. Yeah. And so I was balancing all of these, trying to find my niche and really helping clients that with different areas that I was interested in. And then I ran basketball leagues for the club and volleyball leagues. And then a mentor of mine recognized the leadership skills in me that I didn't know I had I didn't know I had it. I didn't think I was ready. Why me? I was the new trainer. And my inner critic was saying no, but I had a mentor who tapped me on the shoulder one day and said, there's a management position coming in the club and I think you should apply for it. And it was a fitness manager of a top performing personal training team. So intimidating. I mean, Jorge Cruz was my trainer and John Gary was my group instructor. So if you follow Pilates or you've watched TV or read books, Keita Pelly, who was an infomercial star, was one of my personal trainers. Steve Cotter, who's the kettlebell king, was one of my personal trainers. So talk about intimidating, stepping into that role, leading this team of superstars. but I learned so much from that mentor and that time. And this was the point in my career where I knew that I started to understand that my why was impact. And I realized the greater impact I could have by working through these professionals. If I could inspire Kita, she could inspire 300 people. And if I could inspire Jorge, he's inspired millions of people. And I just, for me, that was a really pivotal point in my career because I learned about impact. I chose the path of teaching instructors and kind of removing myself from the front line a little bit, giving up some of my clients. But it was really a big turning point in my career, and one that I chose reluctantly, but eyes wide open, I'll say.
I love that. And you're right. Sometimes you have to move over, right? You have to move some stuff out of the way. You have to clean out the attic a little bit. You can't do everything all the time. And so when you really find your niche, and I love that this mentor actually helped you to discover that leadership is your niche. And even though you didn't see it, someone else saw it in you. And that again is the beauty of mentorship. It's like a mom. You know, a mom always sees the best in us, but when it's someone else, we're like, okay, I think I can buy into this because my mom's supposed to love me no matter what.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Yeah, there's another point in my career I'd love to share with the audience, and that was when I started to feel burned out. So at this point, I had been, again, I'd held every role. I went from fitness manager to general manager. I'd become a national PT director. I then worked with a fitness franchise, and I was the COO of that company. So amazing, wonderful opportunities. And then again, a national personal training director for a larger club chain. And I saw a lot of shifting happening in the industry, and it was in the group space and in the personal training space. And we were seeing a lot of franchise concepts come in, the one I worked for being one. And it was attracting a lot of fitness professionals to our industry who were coming in under this one modality or this one program. And they didn't really have a clear path of where to go in the industry or how to obtain a certification, how to get beyond that concept or that studio and emerge and grow. So I was very curious about how we as an industry could embrace and create points of entry for people coming into our industry, no matter how they found us. And the franchise concept I worked with was a stroller fitness concept. So these were new mommies who had a baby. They were motivated by staying home with the baby, and they wanted to become fitness professionals. So they got their certification, but they were only exposed to that audience and that special population. That's just an example of what I mean by coming in at different entry points. Then CrossFit was growing, and then the Orange Theories and the Anytimes and different concepts were coming in. So I got really curious in my career, and I was feeling stuck. What's next? Will I always be a fitness manager? Will I always be, running a company for someone else? What's next for me? And I share that with the audience because it was a time for me to explore what I didn't know. And what I didn't know was I had a curiosity about what was happening globally. And I had a curiosity about how our industry would respond and embrace these fitness professionals and help them to come in and stay in the industry and have thriving careers. So I took a career change and I became a supplier for a licensed fitness concept. And I got to be in a position where I would meet club owners and help them with bringing this concept into their clubs. And I learned and I grew and I got global exposure, and it helped me to refine my brand, which is fitness is my business. And that helped me along the way to further explain where I found my fit in the industry and where I wanted to thrive and grow. So fitness is my business was my brand. It's my hashtag, and it's kind of how I reinvented myself.
I love that. And I love that you talk about, finding a door, kind of finding a niche, because it is an ever changing kind of constantly moving dynamic space. And sometimes we have to kind of find a door, and sometimes we have to open it a little bit, right? Find a little crack and find a way that we might be able to fit in there, because we know our expertise more than anyone. Then we can take a look at what's going on and then say, you know what, I think I've got some space here. I think I can make an impact in this situation. So I love that. That's a great great way of putting it. And one of the things that I do actually a lot of times to do a reset is I journal a lot. I journal a lot about my goals, where I've been, what's working, what's not working. I check in with myself a lot, and then I check in with those other mentors out there. Like I said, friends in the business space, friends who come from different entities. I listen to what's going on in their space, and I kind of want to get an idea of how fitness fits into the whole world, right?
Yeah.
So we do have a question, by the way. There's a question that says, are there any areas of fitness that are up and coming or not really tapped into when it comes to presenting?
That's a great question. So I will tell you, we spoke about one already. The behavior change and the mental health aspect is emerging and growing. Nutrition. So we have a whole track in nutrition. So there's a big piece there, but your question was specific to fitness. We still see anything anatomy related is getting a really big response from our audience. So in the PT space, that's growing. And then in terms of teaching and group fitness, it's interesting. You could be teaching people how to be better instructors with any modality, or you can kind of take a path to teach on one modality. So what I mean by that is you might be using a specific branded piece of equipment, and there's opportunities to become a master instructor trainer with brands and concepts. Each supplier now has their own team of master instructor trainers that teach on that modality. And that's all happened in our careers. We've seen that emerge and grow. So there's lots of teaching opportunities. If you are in love with, let's just say, the BOSU has a whole team of professionals that present all over the country. So that's what I would offer. But if you want to teach to every fitness professional and you're not as interested in teaching on a specific modality, then there's opportunity to teach about engaging your audience, cueing, all the things that we've talked about today that make a great instructor on stage. You could be teaching people how to become better instructors and how to refine those skills and those talents.
And I think that's a great thing that you tapped into, because that's kind of where I was talking about earlier. I've always been education based. So I've taught for education based certification companies, but you're talking about a brand itself and doing specific education geared toward that brand. And so there again, it's kind of finding your jam. If you love Body Bar and that's something that you use all the time and you're like, hey, I would love to present for them, versus I want to present like a certification workshop that's more of like, this is my degree in fitness, so you're at the degree in fitness, but then where do you go from there, which is specializing, which is really in every field. We specialize in mental health, we specialize in cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever it might be. So every field, it's good to have a specialty, a place where you go that you're kind of known for that.
Agreed. Yeah. And most conferences now have a percent of their schedule that is sponsored education sessions. So it's actually, for some, it's an easier path to get selected. If you are working with a balanced body, or you're working with the Body Bar, as we mentioned, or BOSU, it could be an easier path to getting a position if you've auditioned with them and have a position in their master instructor team. I didn't ever work directly with any suppliers when I was teaching and presenting in my early career. I was teaching primarily personal trainers around the business of personal training and around communication skills and around how to grow your clientele. So that is more general and applicable to all of the personal trainers. Yet, to your point, I was specializing in the business track. So I had to find that, this is where my content sits. It sits over here. So what are all the different subjects that are being selected in the business track, and how does my content fit in that track? So if you're a Group X instructor, that's a big takeaway. Look on these program agendas and see what are the subjects that are being selected, and what's missing, and what's next, because we want to attract the next generation of Fit Pros. We don't just want to serve all of us who keep coming year after year. That's important, and we will continue to serve those folks, but we also want to go out and choose new instructors who will resonate with a new audience of fitness professionals.
Yeah, I love that. So I think, fitness is kind of an interesting, it's almost like massaging specialty skills, but also I think to a degree, being a little multifaceted, right? So another way to kind of find your niche is writing. So even if you don't speak and present, you can also write in the fitness space. And that's another way to get your brand known and to get people recognizing your name. There's a lot of different ways to diversify in the fitness space, and you can still have your niche and you can still specialize. But there's a lot that goes into being a diversified product, so to speak. And I hate to refer to us as products, but we kind of are, where we're providing services, right? So, I like to speak, I like to present, I like to educate, but I also like to write. So kind of find some different ways to reach people out there. And again, just determine, do I want to reach the consumer or do I want to reach the fit pro? So I think if I had to sum it up, Amy, the first and foremost, mentorship is huge, right? Mentorship is huge. Doing your homework. So researching different jobs, different companies, as if you're studying for an exam. So if you want to present for AFAA or you want to present at Idea World, look at the applications, look at the criteria and determine, okay, what am I missing and how do I get this information? Then hone in on your speaking skills, join mentoring groups, join Toastmasters, practice in front of your friends and family, really get a hold of what your jam is. And if you want to diversify, that's good, but really have this niche. Did I sum that up pretty good?
I think you did. And then part of your research when you have that lab coat on is really looking at yourself critically and make sure you talked about, is it consumer, is it fit pro? But beyond that, when we talk about jam, that is the thing that lights you up so that it feels natural and it really is your it's where you thrive. It's that space where you really are the happiest. So there's a bit of homework to do on you, and then the why as to is the reason you want to present because you think it's the next logical step in your progression and in your career, or is the reason you want to present because you have a lot to teach other fitness professionals? Neither of those is right or wrong, but just dig into that a little bit to make sure that you're coming to presenting with the right attitude and mindset. Be prepared for a lot of no's. Just like in personal training, you'll get one yes for 99 no's. I hope it's not that many for presenting, but learn from those no's. So if there is a no, where was I lacking? Put your lab coat on and go and dig into that piece of yourself or that gap in your learning and work on that so that you're a stronger applicant next time.
I love that. And, the other thing is too, that it's okay that, just like motivation changes over time, like what motivated me to exercise 20 years ago is not what motivates me now. But for that, under that same concept is that we change, right? Our lives change and we have different experiences and we meet different people who see different things than us. And that kind of helps us to massage our career differently as well. I used to think that the only thing I ever wanted to do was just to teach fitness concepts like choreography and all of that. Now, when I apply to conventions, the only thing I'm applying under is a behavior change, mental wellness topics. So now I'm applying on things like how to have better boundaries, how to manage stress, and that's my jam. Because again, that's what I want to connect the two communities, but that's definitely changed over time. Yeah. And I think that that's okay. We can kind of massage our career according to our experiences, and that's what makes us most authentic.
100%. I completely agree with that. I was in the pre-postnatal fitness world when I was having babies, and it was perfect. It was my essence at that point in time. But now that my children are much older, sadly, the last thing I want to do is be with little babies all the time. So I know that. So that's okay. But that's just a small example of how my career has evolved, and what was once my everything is now another resource or tool that I have in my bag of tricks.
Absolutely, just an experience. And we have another question, and it actually leads into something that I know that you want to talk about here before we close up. And it's, with so many events going virtual, any insight on presenting? And I just lost it. See, that's what happens when I try to read something really small, okay? Any insight on presenting for those events? And I know you're going to talk about a virtual event. So any insight on those virtual events, and does that require a different skill set?
Well, that's a fascinating question because we're learning that yes, in fact, it does. There's been a lot of trainings that have been online, and but nothing like we've seen now. And I'm sure you're all experiencing it by being now teaching to your own audiences via camera. It takes a very different skill set. It's you don't want to be a talking head where in a convention you're up, you're moving, you're engaging with the audience in a different way. And so we are studying that now to make Idea World Virtual impactful for its audience. But there's movement classes and there's lecture based, and it's going to be a lot of work, especially for the movement based classes, for us to pull off an effective conference. So in terms of applying for those, it's the same application process. And unfortunately for our event, we had to cut our program by so many sessions because we know that someone's bandwidth of time they're going to spend in front of a computer rather than being immersed in the entire experience for 4 days is very different. So we've had to cut our program tremendously. It will be announced next week. Idea World Virtual is happening this year, and it's been moved to August. So that's happening. But to anyone who was considering applying, I would suggest, please, again, it's all the tips we shared today, but work on your camera presence. And if you are teaching at a class, well, now you're all getting experience on camera, so it's great, but work on your eye contact to the camera rather than an audience. That's one. We've learned that the speaker standing, I'm sitting today, so bad example, but if I were standing, I would be more animated than if I were sitting. So we're probably asking our presenters to stand as they teach. And then for the movement-based classes, we'll have a lot of practice in front of camera to make sure they pull off as seamlessly as possible for the end user.
Yeah, I love
Great
that.
question. I love that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, because a lot of times when I do my Angie's Tips AFA videos, if I stand, I'll have to redo it because I'll notice that I'm a mover. And I'm like, that's too much action going on. So yeah, it is about navigating yourself on camera. It's a completely different experience than when you're in front of a live audience. Mm-hmm. So I love that. So I really, really appreciate you joining us today, sharing your expertise. Your journey is a fascinating one. I really believe that you had some great, valuable insight to share with everybody. And I truly appreciate our global group fitness community, all of the people joining us today. Thanks to AFA for hosting this, and much love to all of you. Take good care and stay healthy during this time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Angie. It was really a true pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Appreciate you.